With this being said, Shaykh Abdul Salam, he finishes this chapter now by mentioning a very important principle and a doubt that's often heard. Somebody may say now, as we just concluded, that how we can interact with that book. Someone may say, then what's the harm if we try, perhaps maybe take the good and leave the bad? This is a very common one, right? Many of us, we hear it. I take the good and leave the evil. I listen to so-and-so speaker, I take the good and I leave the evil. What's the problem with this principle? It assumes that you know the good and you know the evil. Person who's a lay person, as we mentioned before, Imam Zahabi already said, rahimahullah, the ignorant person doesn't know his own level. How can he know the level of someone else? So how is it possible for a lay person to say, I'm going to sift between the good and the bad? It's not possible. Number two, the ulama, they're the ones who do this. But they're the ones who are telling us that, you know what, there's so much harm in this book, avoid it. So therefore we see that that principle is not a principle of Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, to take the good and leave the evil. Not because if there's something if good in a person, and they have with them a lot of evil, which is dangerous for your deen, you give preference to the evil that they have and you avoid them. Why? Because the good that they have is found with who? With the Ahlul Sunnah, other ulama. And the evil that they have is found with them and others. Why would you want to, as they say, get the poison with the honey? Also, someone may bring now this point. This will Shaykh Abdul Salam, mashallah, he mentions a very good benefit. Somebody may raise the point and say, wait, some of the earlier scholars, they used to take from the people of bid'ah. Following brothers, this is a very common statement. Some of the ulama of the past, they used to take from Ahlul Bid'ah. Ulama of hadith, even Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, he narrates from certain people who have with them some kind of tashayyu', right? Some kind of kharijiyya, etc. So Imam al-Bukhari, he did that. Why can't we do that? In the sense that we'll also take that same approach, that we can still benefit from somebody who has with them mistakes. Here, Shaykh Abdul Salam, he mentions something very important. In the Muqaddimah, Fath al-Bari, in Hajar, he has a Muqaddimah, Fath al-Bari, the introduction. He mentions and explains this principle of taking the hadith from Ahlul Bid'ah. It's not unrestricted. There's some people who make unrestricted, they're restricted. What were the Salaf Salih doing when they took the ahadith from the people of innovation? What they did was they took the ahadith from certain narrators who had ahadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those ahadith were not ahadith that supported their innovation. There were also people who had good deen, they were not liars. There were also people who were not at the level of disbelief when it comes to the innovation. Their innovation also didn't somehow distort their ability to narrate, because some of the people bid'ah were known to be unreliable. Then, in the cases where they also couldn't find those narrations, then they were pressed to take it. From taking the maslahah over any harm there, because the hadith of Rasulullah needs to be preserved. How can someone make a similarity between these shurut and these quyud to just generally just taking from anybody good and evil? Read, he says, Abu al-Fath al-Qushayri, he writes, Ibn Hajar cites in Fath al-Bari. And when it comes to what, he's talking about taking the rawayah from Ahlul Bid'ah. He says, when it comes to this issue, then we don't turn to the narrations of the people of innovation, except now in the situation where, and then now the Shaykh mentions the reason, that the person who, the rawayah of this person, innovator, is not one whose narrations are in support of his innovation. Or in the situation there's no one else, as long as if there's no one else who agreed with him or has also narrated the same narration. Means in the situation where we have someone else who narrated the same hadith, we don't need to take his hadith, we go to the people's sunnah. But in the situation there isn't. The Shaykh says then, in describing the people we take, there must be people who are trustworthy, who protect themselves from lying, who are well known for religion, in relation to the fact that they narrate hadith to the point that their innovation doesn't affect that ability. In that situation, it's a must to give preference to the benefit of taking that hadith and spreading the sunnah over the humiliation or the need to go take from the people or the person of innovation. Wallahu a'lam. It's Fath al-Bari, volume 1, page 385. It's a paraphrase, what he's saying. What is important about that statement? Shaykh Abdul Salam, the reason why he mentioned this, he says now, if this is in regards to the ahadith Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then what do you think about the benefits underneath that? He says, in that case, min bab al-awla, it's more deserving that we don't take it from it. And if the situation comes that we must, then it's according to hadi tafsil. Then we will need to be detailed and explained in detail, which is not the time for, or we don't have the place for it now. The summary is that when people take that statement out of context, the Salaf Salih used to take from the people innovation, period. This is not true and it's not honest. Because what's happening now, a lot of lay people are being told, and they're actually being indoctrinated to believe, that take the good and leave the evil. And the problem with this is that ultimately it damages them more than benefits. Because what do they know about the good and evil? Imagine today if you know somebody and is not good at business, not trustworthy in their business dealing, are you going to tell somebody do business with him when there's discount? When there's not discount, don't do business? Anytime you go to a person do business, he's not trustworthy, right? Discount or no discount, you're probably going to get cheated. Today in dunya, we don't do these things. But when it comes to our deen, it's a problem and it's something which has to be addressed. And here the Shaykh did this on purpose to mention the fa'idah, because this is the way of the Salaf.